Hey, Roland, do you hear me?
I can hear you, Rich.
Hello, good morning. I'm a bit late, sorry. So let's see whether I get my... Now my speakers should work. Good morning, Rich. Hello, good afternoon,
Hi, Martin. I have
Roland.
some sound problems as well.
Yeah, now, but I hear you. Okay. Okay. Rich is also here. Can you
Hey,
hear me?
Roland. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Today from the normal computer. Usually I use my smartphone, but I believe I've forgotten it in the car. That's also why I'm late, because I was looking for the phone. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I misplace things, but that's already since I'm very young, so it's not nothing unusual.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. Okay, Rich, I really must thank you so much for your article with uh, the fighter brand. That
Uh,
has that. Did you see that I published it?
yes, I did. Thank
Okay.
you very much. That really came out nice. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, also on LinkedIn, I put it into all my 20 groups that have
Mhm.
something like 100,000 members or so. Yeah, so it went quite around, and I also I'm using that now as one of a favorite strategy for startups who leverage on licensing IP and know-how from universities, because
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
universities, and it doesn't even matter which one, they all try to get the foot into the door so that they benefit from what is done with the marketing money that they don't have or do not want to spend. So
Right. Right.
they try to lock in the inventors from outside into something with their own IP, and hope that they develop that, and they could just sit on the back or we call them backseat drivers, right? So and uh, and I believe that's really a way out to try to start building a fighter brand, which is not intended to be very profitable, but somehow at a minimum profit get market penetration and preventing the competition from doing the same thing, because they are there already. So that and in the special case that I'm talking about, this startup has licensed the technology from a university, and they are at technology readiness level 7 or 8, which means very close to the product. While with their own ideas, what they want to improve, they are maybe at technology readiness level 3 or 4, and uh, and they try to get investors in, and the investors, they don't know the whole picture. They only know that there's something brewing and they want to invest money and hope that they could be they could have 5% of a unicorn, which never happens. But anyway, this is the expectation. So if you as a young startup then already choose a bifurcated business strategy where you say, okay, I get my market entry as soon as possible with a product that is of course not perfect, but I also don't want to be perfect, because we build a perfect product along the way when we get more insight from you selling the much cheaper product. And that also falls together with my favorite strategy, that if you have something that is not perfect, but you can sell it today, you should do so and not wait until tomorrow until you have a better product. And if you can split your IP such that the one is not linked to the other, the intellectual property for the improvement or for the much better product, then everything is set for success, because the university wouldn't sue you because you develop a newer product unless the license agreement is written such that they also benefit from improvements, which is seldom the case, I must say. And as a lawyer, you should also know what you do when you draft such a license agreement. So you want to have in mind that this this business plan or this business model will ultimately evolve. But and I was so surprised when I talked to people, nobody knows it. Is completely unknown. And yeah, so I'm really grateful.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very excuse me. It doesn't surprise me at all that you say it's unknown, because it's not well, discussed, and it's not, evident, and it's pretty contrary to people's thinking, right? So that's another aspect of it. But from a startup's perspective, it's a great way to do some, disruptive innovation, right?
Yes.
Is to use that kind of concept of the fighter brain.
Yes.
And, from a market entry standpoint, and going, into the low end of the market, and, being even able to compete with, the major players in the low end of the market, because, sometimes the major players in a market will, have a low end product, but it's still, feature rich, and it's still, I'm going to call it, overloaded with capabilities that aren't being used, right? And and if the startup is smart, they can, fine tune their offering to the needs of the market, much more accurately, and upon market entry, and get a real foothold like that, and then sort of, go up market over time, right?
Yes. So I told them, so why don't you put a SIM card into your device? Then you can communicate all the time. And then I said, wow, we didn't think about that. That is smart. Yes. And then, then you find out what your customers use and what not. And then you just do what they want and more of that. And and that coincides also this week. Hello? Did I hear something? No. So this last Sunday, I had a long talk with one of my friends, old friends. He is in the meantime a university professor in Saclay, which is the largest university of France, probably also Europe. And he's teaching computer science. So we had a long talk. And he told me something surprising, because we both started as programmers. And he said, with the newest generations of the large language model, he doesn't program anymore, although he's making programs. And then he said, oh, I just give the large language model the task, write a program that does this and this and this and this, and I give some parameters and boundary conditions, and then I let it work for 15 minutes, and iteratively the large language model would interact with the editor and the compiler and the working environment, and the large language model would test out the software. And he says he never ever needs to touch any code anymore, and he's also not interested, because speed today with the fast computers doesn't play any role. And then we were sitting there at the phone and thinking, what would be the consequence? And he said that the software as a service business model is dead, unless you have a database behind that you maintain, and you make sure that it works, and that you make sure that it's unique. So, and he says he would recommend to all the companies that have databases, instead of selling an MCP gateway, which is MCP is an acronym which I forgot what it means, but it means that you can use a database together with a large language model. It's something like an interface where you can ask like a standard query language, but adapted to what large language models do. And he said, no, don't sell these gateways to your customers. Tell me what your software needs to do, and I give you the software together with the access to my database. And he says, writing the software doesn't cost anything anymore. He says he can write a very complex software within 15 minutes time. And so he would rather than custom build software that uses the data of the database providers, but not sell the interface. And this is where the SIM card of this device comes in handily, because once you equip whatever product you have with a back channel where you can collect data, that gives you that database that later you can sell for expensive money, or that gives you that advantage with respect to your competition. Like Christoph Hering is here from China. He always tells us what are the ingredients for the success of the Chinese automobiles, and there are many, but I believe the strongest one is the user database, where the manufacturers in China measure what the customers use and what not, and when and how and whatsoever. So we have really a closed loop here and the feedback and the network situation. Christoph, you're here. Please unmute your microphone. And how do you see that? How important is that feedback loop as compared with the other advantages over the competition?
Yeah, I think, Martin, you're right. The feedback loop is very, very important, and it's definitely something you need to build. I think your idea is quite provoking to say, instead of just giving the customer access to your database and say like, hey, use a chatbot to talk to it, to say like, no, I will build this for you and I just give you the answers you're looking for. So why does he think this is a better approach?
Cost-wise.
Is it because he can charge more money for the custom solution?
Yeah, because if you give them access to the data, then they build their own applications. And you cannot just change the format every now and then so that they need to reprogram it, because that makes everything too complicated. He says the costs for building the software is zero. It's even so cheap that when he writes a piece of software, he doesn't store it anymore for later reuse. He just discards it. He deletes it. And next time he needs a piece of software, he just writes it again. So the cost for zero goes against zero. The cost for software goes against towards zero, really zero. And software as a service, like we pay, I don't know, every month something like $5,000 to NetSuite Oracle for just running a simple ERP system. And
might be able to get you a discount on that kind of ERP system then, Martin. And I had to look up the term for it, Model Context Protocol, MCP. And I would completely agree that unless you have your data stored inside of a recallable function, I don't think you ever want the chatbot to go into your data, because that is just a vector for your data to leak.
Yes.
When you don't want it to. What I've been doing in my database structuring instead is creating the database architecture. So that way I could copy and paste the entire database. So that way I can give you the structure of my database. And what I would do for your types of, I'm going to call them artifacts, I would just pare down only the artifacts related to your account as an exportable CSV file. So that way you could import your CSV file into your database. And now you have all the artifacts that are needed for your equipment, your story, your standard operating procedures, whatever it is to you. But I'm not going to give you access via chatbot because I'm storing other accounts' data. There's no reason for you to have access to another account. This is my way of safety to make sure that you don't get data not related to your account.
Okay, but again, Christoph, back to your question, why would this guy recommend giving away the software instead of the access to the database. Now you have lower costs, and also what Joe mentioned, reduce the risk of data theft, for example. And okay, if you run a patent database, the risk of data theft is not so big as if you run a bank software, for example, a bank database. But still, it is there because and we come here from the patent world. Patent databases are quite cumbersome to maintain because you have about 150 countries that issue patents in this world, or maybe 160 of 190 something in total, and each country has its own format. There's no standard, or the standards are very very unstandardized, if you want to say. And so these companies invest a lot of money into people who update the database manually or who double check what has been automatically updated. And that effort needs to be paid, and it's paid via the fees that they get for access to the database. But at the same time, when you give someone access to your database, there's a possibility that these people slowly over time do a copy of your entire database for free and then have it there for reuse in the future. And that's a danger I would not underestimate.
That doesn't make sense in some ways as a business model, that you would even give them access to your database. I think that you would clone the structure or the solution of how you are managing your database, but only the data that belongs to them do you give to upload back into their database. So it's like you can clone the database structure, and that way all the features are usable, but the data is partitioned.
Yeah. Again, what I want to say is data in the future is more expensive than the software that reads it. And I believe that therefore you should keep your data and offer access to the data through your own software that you program according to the needs of the customer. Another impact is for the software as a service companies, they also have databases, right? They do tax law, they include tax law into the ERP and also CRM knowledge, customer relationship knowledge, and so on. And what I see that why this is so difficult to sell and so expensive is because they have a rigid structure, and if you want to use their software, you have to adapt your own processes to the process of the database. I know of a large company in Germany that builds newspaper printing machines. I believe it's Köbau, König and Bauer, or the competitor, one of the two. And the one of the two invested a lot, something like a 3-digit million euro amount, into customizing the SAP, which is a competitor to Oracle, such that they don't need to change the processes, but they have a software that does what they want. But that was so expensive, and is so expensive also to maintain, that at one point in time they decided, okay, we give up, we now adapt our processes, something like 500 million later. So they decided, okay, it was not so good to swim against the stream. While in the future, I believe it's much cheaper to offer programming a certain process or a bundle of processes according to what the customer wants, instead of offering a fixed package. That's the third impact of AI becoming so powerful. And as soon as we work with data, and that starts with the startup already, you should be prepared to offer that. For example, if you have a measurement tool that measures material properties, and you have a large database from your first 2 million measurements, your customers' 2 million measurements, you can use that to improve making measurements for new customers that come on board. And that would be a feature that is worth money, especially if you have the premium version, right? So the premium version would leverage on the data that was generated with the Fighter brand. So all these new business models come to mind when you talk about what the new LLMs are able to do. And it's all about how to bring the power onto the road. And that can, I believe, very easily be done with Rich's Fighter brand model that he worded so nicely for the German Mittelstand.
Well, I certainly like the way that you've explained that, Martin. And I think that there's a lot of value there in that concept. And I hope you get some traction with it with some of the startups you're talking to.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I can tell you because with Credentilix, we have the platform, you know, we can directly talk with the startups. So
yeah, sure.
And there's a lot of work there for the innovation partners. Yes, go ahead.
I want to add something to this. Similarly, I know a manufacturer that just spent $50 million on their Oracle customization.
Okay.
50 million.
Okay.
And it is a company that got purchased by private equity. So in some ways, we're getting to the point where it's like a roll-up of pay to play. Hey, I buy into a company. Okay, now you're going to use my vendor. And so the money doesn't just go 50 million. It exchanges pockets, but it might end up in someone's pocket. And so I think it's almost the strategy to go in and then really to pay yourself another way. Now, I do agree that AI is going to hack at this pathway.
Now the question is which AI? Because I mean, we talked for almost 2 hours, and I'm putting that into LinkedIn posts one by one over I did already 4 or 5 or so, but it's 15, right? So
if you're going to say the AI is the thing to help create it with a person to create the next database structure, great. I'm okay with that. But AI is not going to finish it by itself.
No.
AI is just an ideation tool. It will not make the tool to a user requirement because it can't even remember the user requirement to that detail in the complexity. It would muddle it up.
Okay, when I asked this question, it was a rhetorical question. The thing is the following. China has brought AI models into the market that cost only 50% of the use of AI models of the US AI models. And companies like Siemens are using Chinese AI models as one of the many AI models they use. So I believe that even the AI model business will become, how to say, victim of the message that software as a service is a dead horse that you shouldn't ride anymore. Because AI is software as a service. And that I found that quite intriguing because the whole what we see today is an outcome of what has happened 6 years ago when AI became public with the ChatGPT of OpenAI. And now this technology has made programming worth zero. So, okay, you still need, like, you cannot live without programmers because at one point in time you need to be able to find out where is a certain bug that and the AI still has bugs. Software written by AI still has bugs, but you need all the experience and the knowledge of a professional programmer to deal with such bugs. You cannot get a newbie and write a replacement for an ERP system, even if you have AI that could do that. But at one point in time, there would be a bug because AI is not 100% good. AI is maybe 80% good or 90% good. And what he said is, This suddenly changed from last year to this year. Last year, he wrote a program using AI. It was very fast in minutes, and then he used about 20% of the time that he used before for writing the whole program, 20% of the total time of writing the program for debugging it. So he was still 5 times as fast as before. But he says today, I cannot even measure the time that I need for programming because I just need to describe my boundary conditions and some input and output test data. And I describe in my own words what the software should do. And I give this to the LLM. Out comes a program that is almost perfect. And if it's not perfect, then he would just tell the AI, hey, this program is not perfect. I gave this input data and that input data, and the outcome was wrong. And then the AI would say, okay, sorry for doing this, and thank you for telling me. Here's my new version in 3 seconds. And then the new version just has fixed this bug. So it all comes down to ask the right questions when you verify whether the software does what it should do or not. And that is for experienced guys. That leads to another issue that we can discuss about. But I just wanted to tell you that from last year to this year, he said the whole thing went from 80% good to 99% good. And then I said, what did they do? And then he said, despite being an AI programming expert, he said, I don't know. But it was something like many incremental improvements over time, and suddenly it's there. And I find that surprising. He's one of the leading AI scientists of France. And
Martin?
yes.
Little bit confused. Maybe we can clarify this. Of course, all of you are much deeper into this programming business than I am. But you said software as a service is dead by this model. No, that's not correct. I mean, if you have software as a service, and I look at it from the point of view of a trademark attorney right now,
yes,
then you have your software stored on some cloud structure or whatever. The client gets access, puts into the software his data and gets the result. And this is exactly what you write. I mean, your software as a service is that you have LLM, which is capable of creating powerful software.
Yes.
You exactly described yourself what you give into the model, namely the parameters, the conditions to be fulfilled, and the software spits out a perfect solution.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, you should not give access to the client to all what lies behind your software, all your trained LLMs. But software as a service as such, if I understand it correctly, is not dead, but is, a business maker
I'll add
based
some
on...
clarity to this.
Sorry?
I'll add some clarity to this because I'm building a software as a service. The software itself has no value. The licenses underneath to access the software require distribution and or resale from Microsoft. The Microsoft license resale has value. The software is just the perk that makes you choose me over a different distributor. The software has no value. It is absolute perks. You could build it yourself, but you're not going to spend the time doing it because I've already come up with all the criteria. So it's now more about the value of the license to utilize the software because it's a customized variation of the software. Does that add context?
Hardly. Okay. If you talk about customizing software, I understand your point. Okay. It's clear that software itself has no value as long as I can make money out of it. This goes along with licenses models and customer contracts and stuff like this. But yeah, I think the question has been answered. So thanks a lot.
But maybe I was too general. Not all software as a service is dead. But the software as a service that allows you to do your own software according to your own requirements, that will still have a future. Yes. And also the databases who offer the customized access to the database and maybe not only a user interface that has this field and this field and this field, but a user interface that allows you to adapt the software to your own process in your business, and use the software that you're using to. I give you an example. Very common for patent attorneys is incoming mail. Right? So a mail comes in. So in the first place, you need to register it as being received. Sometimes you need to reply, "Oh, I have received that mail." Next thing is you need to open it and read it, and you need to identify whether there are deadlines there that you need to note, and then you need to classify it in which department would get that mail, or does the mail contain several problems that go to the same department or even to different departments, and then you need to follow up that the mail gets properly processed. The questions there or the problems there or the triggers would be answered correctly, and then there would be a deadline noted, and then there is a deadline is followed up, and then at one point in time you can strike out the deadline from your diary book, or you put a hook after the task that it's dealt with, and the client is happy, so that you can invoice. And the question is now, there are 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and each firm, at least as I'm aware of, they have their own specific processes that you need to learn before you can even work in the system, because it's necessary that you learn all aspects. But there are some programs out there that force you into their template of dealing with that process. And those softwares are dead, because it's now much easier to offer a software as a service that not only offers the support of the process, but also the database to store and handle that data and to work with it and to dig it out and do some evaluations after that. And all according to what you want, and not according to what the programmer of the company wants or what he thought that is important. It's all now dependent on what you want. And the funny thing is, writing this software costs nothing. When I say nothing, I mean a few hours work as compared with $15 million customization into Oracle. And that's a revolutionary part of this AI.
Though the storage of it, where you're storing it, still has value. Are you keeping it on
Yes.
your own servers and on-prem? Probably not. You want a cloud access, that way all your
Yes.
employees can get access to it.
Yes.
Then you have to pick either Amazon's AWS
Yes.
or Microsoft's Azure. And so being those distributors, I still think has great value, and that your software customizations of databases are now the perk. Why do you choose which vendor?
Yes. And now you can select. You have one who says, "Oh, we have this, and we have thought for you about that, and this is the standard that fits most firms in this world." And then you say, "Oh, but my incoming is different because I use this email program and not that one," and so on and so on. And then you say, "Okay, the easiest is you scrap all your software and you take what we have, because then you know that it works." These times are over.
And what I've heard from most of the businesses that are doing this type of integration, they're dev studios, development studios. They don't really end up selling the software as a service, as a product. They end up being a studio that sells hours for customizing the interface.
Yes, and this business model doesn't work anymore. Or if you are working in that area, you should be prepared to what? I don't know, to hand out software for free or what? Doesn't make sense.
Well, that software doesn't have the price. It's the per hour that you spend to make the customizations on the software. And so the competitive advantage becomes you use AI and you charge less hours, and that's why they come to you, because you charge less to get more software features created than to go to another person that does it all manually, because they are charging you $50 million for an Oracle.
Yeah, of course, I didn't say that all such companies go bankrupt overnight or become obsolete. It's like with the patent attorneys. 20% will be able to do the total work on the same value, same level of the value chain. That's the outcome. And so the 80% need to find other stuff that they can do. Specialization is the catchword, I would say. So if you know someone who is in the business of adapting Oracle or SAP to what companies need, I would tell them look into how to automate this.
So I've heard great feedback about like Salesforce. I have a friend that sells and integrates Salesforce.
Okay.
And his weakness for Salesforce is that Salesforce rolled up and bought a lot of companies, and none of the features are integrated together. They have all these different solutions,
Yeah.
but they don't work together. And so then you have to pay an integrator to do all the customizing of integrating the what do we call it? The unique, the one-off scenarios. They still have to make all the tie points, but once it's done, the value is paid for by hours spent on that integration, and then really it's the Salesforce distributor that has it's kind of a software as a service, but it's not the software, it's the licenses for Salesforce that are really the billable.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I find it quite revolutionary because we should mark that date in the calendar. I just to tell you, I have a photo, a comparison of photo of I believe 1904 and 1914. On the Fifth Avenue, there was a Corso. On 1904, I forgot which day it was. 1904, there were all horse carts and one car. Yeah, that was in Manhattan, right? All carts were with horses, and there was one internal combustion engine car. And 10 years later, there was all with internal combustion engine cars and one horse cart. And then the question is, find the horse cart, and all that within 10 years. And if you know what is necessary in order to run a society on horse carts, I can give you a few examples because my family is blacksmith back until 1635. So, and blacksmith is a profession that was deeply rooted into the horse cart industry or horses industry. And all that on Manhattan Island within 10 years' time was gone. And the same what we have now worldwide, there are no more conventional programmers. And when I say no more, I don't mean really zero, no more. Sure, there still are some, but lesser and lesser. And this is only the beginning of the lesser. And the very early beginning of the lesser. To a degree that I dug out my old microcontroller lab. I have an environment. I used to program microcontrollers a lot in the end of the last century and the beginning of this century. But then I put it into a box and into a cabinet, and that was in my basement, and I got it out after 25 years, and I tried to make it run, and I tried to get support for writing programs with a microcontroller using ChatGPT, and you would be surprised. It's perfect. So I'm thinking of getting my microcontroller things back. So I do all the little gadgets that we had, like an RPM measurement device right, that you could buy for $50 online or whatever, and you can program it yourself using an old microcontroller that is lying around for 25 years. And so all this microcontroller programming is now gone. And that was actually one of the reasons why, I give you an example, Nokia went bankrupt, because for each new phone model they had, if you remember, we had the CTO of Nokia in this talk here. It was about 4 years ago. It was Donald. His name was Donald Mac something. I forgot if I remember. Donald, and he said at one point in time he had so many mobile phones operating systems to maintain that he couldn't get enough engineers to do so. And today, with a large language model, one single person could maintain the entire Nokia platform with 25 models or 30 models, each having their own operating system. And he had in Texas, somewhere in Texas, he had a design center and R&D center in Texas with 1,500 engineers doing nothing else than maintaining operating systems for mobile phones. And the difference was between Apple and Nokia was that Apple had one operating system for all mobile phones and computers and whatever, you name it. And all what was necessary when they exchanged when they brought in a new model, they just had to program the drivers so that they can communicate with that software. The Nokia phones were much closer to the hardware from the as seen from the software than the Apple iPhones or the Apple phones, and that was the reason why Nokia couldn't cope with the competition from Apple, or at least one of the major reasons. They simply couldn't keep on juggling more balls of the same thing, more different balls of the same thing. So, and that failure today would have been much more unlikely than 20 years ago. Was it 20 years ago? Yes, maybe 20.
The interesting question is, why did Nokia from the beginning had such a fragmented hardware and software structure? You said the software is the reason why there are so many software operating systems was because they were close to the hardware.
Yes.
And that means the hardware also must have been very heterogeneous.
Yes.
So why did they start with such a heterogeneity?
I can tell you why, because the Nokia guys were all people like myself, trained radio amateurs when they were young. Then in the army, they became radio operators in intelligence, maybe. And then after that, they went to study electronics, right? Not electrical engineering, but electronics. And when you study electronics, you build radios, and you have fun in building the best radio in the world. And then suddenly, then you think, oh, and now I need a computer. So, okay, then you put a microcontroller into your radio, and then you make it smaller, and you do this and that. And this was the Nokia design way of designing things. And I know because I'm from the same generation as these people. I'm today 61. When Nokia went bankrupt, I was in my early 40s, and I would never have touched an iPhone because I didn't like the touch screen. I wanted my Nokia, and I really loved it. I just became suspicious when I couldn't do my emails as well as my colleagues could when they use an iPhone. That's when I really became suspicious, and I bought my first iPhone to have an easier life with my emails on the phone. And so that's why Nokia, they just had the wrong idea. They came from the radio side and tried to make it smaller and smaller and smaller and then integrate the computer, while Apple came from the computer side and made the computer smaller and smaller, and then they put in a radio. And everything was already there because the computer can easily deal with analog signals if you put an analog digital converter inside, and then your analog data suddenly is digital, and then when you put it out through the loudspeaker, you convert it back to a sound, which is very easy for a digital computer. But how easy is it if you have an analog radio like the Nokia phones, and they were very good. They had the best antennas in the world. And so they had much better reception than the iPhones originally. But then after all your analog circuitry, you need to get somehow digital, because otherwise you cannot have email. SMS works, but it's a much slower protocol. And it is digital, but much slower and not as complex, and no images and no other stuff and no whatever, right? And so they simply came from the wrong direction, and they didn't hear the train coming. And the train was to see the future of the development in electronics. Today, if you do analog electronics, you're a very rare dinosaur and sought for in this world. Because just to give you an example, when you talk about young engineers about matching impedance, they look at you like as if you're a cow or a mountain. While when I studied and when I did my all my radio amateur stuff, matching impedance was of utmost importance. Because only when you have matched impedances, are you sure that you don't have reflections in your analog systems and no energy losses at interfaces and so on. But today, there's only one impedance that need to be matched, namely when you digitalize your analog signal in the very front end, and you do that by using very high resistances so that there are almost zero currents and no energy flowing. So there's no, but that goes too deep already. But yeah, I'm not ranting. I tell you my historical insight from being an engineer for now almost 35 years, or no, 36 years.
This is why one of the best signals that we use in manufacturing for sending data back and forth is milliamps.
Yes.
Because you put such a large impedance through that the flow of amps is much more accurate than the voltage of a signal.
Yeah.
And so you put such a high impedance that then you have to force through amperes.
Yes.
And that's what you measure. You don't measure voltage.
And you would be surprised. I built this when I worked. I did my master thesis in Canada, and I worked for a subsidiary of SPA, and they built the robot arm for the space shuttle, and I developed a sensor for measuring the bending of the arm of the space shuttle. And the first thing that I did is I switched from measuring the strain gauge signals with based on a voltage. I switched to measuring the current, and suddenly all the noise was gone, and they were very surprised. And they used that, and it's simply two different worlds. But yes, you're right, Joe. So, but this you cannot do today if you don't have an old guy who has seen all the analog problems. And that brings me to my next thing. If you look today at young people that work with AI, you see two effects. The first one is that they think that they can compare AIs by the quality of the result that the AIs give back based on the prompt that you enter. I believe this is wrong, because no AI can be 100% right, as I've said before. Most AIs today are at 80%. But for me, 80% is good, because if I put then the 20% in, then I'm still 5 times faster with a very good result as compared with before. While the young people today, they don't even know what is good or not. They just know what the AI gives out, and then they just blast it out if they don't see a major problem. And that's because they don't have the experience to see the major problems, because they were never forced to work manually without the AI. And the second thing that I see is that more and more people submit papers to me that read very consistent, I would say, very learned and very insightful and so. But when you ask them questions about the paper, they cannot answer the questions. And they sometimes even don't remember what they have written in their own paper. Or they are completely wrong, contrary to what they say in the paper. And we know that students always copy from somewhere, right? So this is not unusual. You find even PhD theses that are copied from somewhere. But today's large language models, they deliver subject matter so genuinely good that you can no longer derive from the paper whether the author is intelligent or not, or knows his stuff or not. So these are two phenomena that both my friend, the professor for AI, and myself see in our work, because we both work with AI and with young people who use AI, and we are also using AI. And what I see is that, yeah, this is the effect. But the question now is, if it took me something like 35 years to do things manually, and I learned everything by doing and with sweat and blood and frustration. And now putting that experience and knowledge into something that was generated by AI cranks it up from 80% to 99%, at least, I would hope. And the question is, what do all those young lawyers that and also programmers who did not go through those 30 years of practicing, because the AI is now doing all this. So how do they learn how a 100% work result done manually without the help of an AI when all these problems today are solved by AI? I have no answer for that. Doesn't this resonate with you all here?
You hope
Yeah.
that the AI creates new businesses and they go work in those.
Yeah, sure, but they would.
Yeah, but I think the main point is we all work in professions where we are more or less personally responsible for the output of our work. I frequently use AI to ask legal questions, and I can tell you, I would
Yes.
never use the answer without checking it, because most of what comes out is bullshit.
Yes.
And no matter if you're a patent attorney or if you are a business consultant, you give recommendations to your clients, and they may be based on AI, but you stand behind it with your name and your reputation. And so I think the new generation of attorneys and business consultants, they will have to learn it in a hard way. The first time they get a bloody nose because they delivered something which has been created by AI, but which is not correct, they will get the repercussions and will become more cautious next time. So that's basically the learning cycle which we can expect.
Yeah, I thought the same. Problem is only if you're the victim. It's like, yeah, I don't know whether this is fake news or so, but I heard in the
No, it's real. It's real to the point the United States now calls itself a K-type economy, where Starbucks is only being sold to the upper half of the K. It doesn't bother marketing to the average worker on the lower part of the K.
Yeah, so the K gets a larger lower part and a smaller upper part. And it's not because society is so unfair, it's because people don't invest into learning what they do. And what bothers me most is this sense of entitlement that I'm encountering, that people dump their AI stuff on me, and then they expect me that I correct it. And I wouldn't call it arrogance. It's something like a feeling that they are better in a way, because they can use AI and can produce 20 pages in 1 minute. But without realizing that of the 20 pages, 4 pages are complete nonsense. And the thinking is, why do you care? It's good enough. When it's not. Just, yeah. just today I saw an email generated by AI, and the AI forgot one not and connected two events with each other, being conditional on each other when they were independent. And the email looked perfect. And you could have sent it out, but the not would have cost you 35,000 euros, the missing not. And yeah, it could have, I must say could have.
This is why your database needs a risk ledger.
Yeah. We can talk about risk and AI on a different occasion. I have I have a friend of mine is CEO of one of the largest insurances in Singapore, local one. And we talk about AI and self-driving cars and insurance. And he says he would prefer that all cars were self-driving because they have something like 95% less accidents. But he says, if you see a car on a sidewalk with one wheel on the sidewalk, and between the floor and the wheel that is on the sidewalk is a pedestrian, and the pedestrian is dead. So obviously the car drove onto the pedestrian on the sidewalk where it should not be. Then if that happens with a taxi driver, everybody is scared and said, everybody is excited, because why does a taxi driver drive over pedestrian when he should not, right? And probably it was human error, and that's why we have an insurance. But he says, when a driverless car stands on a pedestrian flat on the sidewalk, then everybody would say, "See, we told you this is a dangerous technology." And he says, if we only had more of this so-called dangerous technology, because we would have much less accidents. And so as an insurance, he would prefer that. But people's perception is still different. And when we talk about the legal area, we have deadlines I mentioned before. And if you miss those deadlines, sometimes you get a reinstatement when you can prove that this was a human error behind that mistake. And once you automate the task so that the humans are no longer there, you have much less human errors than before. But if an error occurs, it's very unlikely that you get a reinstatement, because they say, no wonder when you use a technology that is inherently erroneous, how would you expect us to give you a reinstatement? Roland, does that resonate with you?
Somehow, yeah. Now, we will have interesting times ahead of us. I mean, ever since ChatGPT stormed the market, there has been so much progress within just a few years. I can hardly grasp it. So, really, really interesting times ahead of us. And also the socioeconomic consequences, which we will have to face. We maybe should discuss that sooner or later. I mean, Martin, you yourself said, okay, you can assign 80% of the time which you usually had to spend on some task to AI and just focus on the 20%. And AI will cause lots of changes in the working structure, and especially if we then combine AI with robotics, we will have the perfect replaceable worker, be it a blue-collar worker or a white-collar worker. And I'm really wondering how this will affect society. So, yeah, maybe we can have some session devoted to that aspect sometimes in the future.
Yeah, I would love to. We could do that with the ICI. Just to let you know, our next ICI will be on 15th of October, and I'm trying to get our futurologist back, and then we may have him talking about this. That I believe would be quite an opportunity. Yeah,
Martin,
so-
I find your example of a car on the sidewalk fascinating, because I expect a Tesla to drive inside of the bike lane and on the sidewalk. but I do not currently expect, once the Waymos go live in my area, that the Waymo would do that, because they are forcing Waymos to be driven by people on the roads in order to train them to the local area. So that way they're less likely to have that failure that they can assume they can drive in the bike lane.
You can do many things in order to improve, but yeah, we only scratched barely at some aspects. We started with the fighter brand, and I really liked where the conversation and the input came from all of you. Thank you so much. We are at the end of our hour. See you next week. I will not be here, but Rich will be here. And Rich, if you need support from our team, please let us know. We wanted to formalize it more. Maybe I very likely will be listening on the phone, but not speaking, because I'm in a train, so I'm unlikely to speak when you talk.
Sure. Yeah. So as long as somebody from your office opens up the room, I can certainly lead the conversation.
Yes, I put you into a chat with Crystal and Khadija, and also Safwan, and then we see where we go. I will also be there. Thank you for your help, Rich, and thank you all for being here today. Thank you, and goodbye. See you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.